Hi, friend. Welcome to Exodus chapter 32. We have been on Mount Sinai with the Lord and with Moses. We have listened as the Lord has been giving instructions to Moses on how his people are to worship him, how they are to follow him. And this all takes place, this 40 days of Moses being up on Mount Sinai takes place after that covenant agreement between the Lord and the people of Israel. And so we've been up on the mountain for quite some time. Today, in this first paragraph of today's passage, the camera changes positions and we go back down to the mountain and we see what is going on with the people and with Aaron. And it's not pretty, friends. And I don't know about you, but my heart sank. In my prayer, I just told God, my heart felt sad. I just feel heartbroken, and partly, maybe mostly, because I know what is in my own heart and my own propensity to behave just as the people of Israel behaved here. My own heart has this propensity to wander from the Lord. We all know it. As the hymn says, we all feel it. And so our prayer is, Lord, tether our hearts to yours. But I'm getting ahead of myself here. Let's look at today's passage and see what the Lord would have us to learn about him and about our propensity to wander from him. All right, so we have the camera changing positions. The camera goes back down to the mountain to see what is happening with the people of Israel and Aaron. And it's not pretty. Verse 1, when the people saw that Moses delayed to come down from the mountain, the people gathered themselves together to Aaron and said to him, "Up," just meaning stand up, get up, come on, be our leader. Make us gods who shall go before us. As for this Moses, the man who brought us up out of the land of Egypt, we do not know what has become of him. All right, so Moses, as we've said, he's been up on Mount Sinai for a long time. 40 days is a long time, and I don't know about you. We've not been here for 40 days, but it feels like we've been up on Mount Sinai for a long time, listening to God's instructions. But they have no idea what is going on with Moses, why the delay. And so they come to Aaron and demand what do they say to him? They demand that he make us gods who shall go before us. And there was a beautiful cross reference there, friends, that takes us back to the beginning of book 2, Exodus chapter 13, verse 21. And the Lord went before them by day in a pillar of cloud to lead them along the way, and by night in a pillar of fire to give them light, that they might travel by day and by night. So clearly they remember having a God that went before them, having a God that was leading them and guiding them, and they want that. They wonder, at least I imagine them thinking that God is gone because Moses is gone. And so they come to Aaron. And they demand, that's what is shocking, they demand that he makes them gods. And friends, as I wrote that down, my observation was answering the what question, that the people of Israel demand Aaron to make gods. And as I sought to understand it, that's what I thought. They clearly remember having this God who was leading them and guiding them. They must have remembered how they felt in the safety of his presence, knowing that he was leading and guiding them. And they want that. They long for that. But my question is, why don't they go to him? Why don't they petition the Lord? Why do they go to Aaron and make this demand? All right, I don't have an answer for that. I'm just asking that question. Now, we might ask how? How does Aaron respond to their demands? Well, shockingly, he does not seem to protest. He doesn't seem to protest at all. We see that he tells them to take off the jewelry, the earrings from their wives and their children. So he's like, collect gold. Number one, he collects gold. Number two, he goes ahead and he fashions it with a graving tool. Again, this all goes against the commands of the Lord that they have heard from him. Number three, he makes a golden calf. Again, going against the commands of the Lord. When the people see it, they say, "These are your gods, O Israel, who brought you up out of the land of Egypt." And boy, that is heartbreaking even to try to read out loud, friends. I mean, it's a complete betrayal of the Lord who has brought them up out of Egypt, who has led them to Mount Sinai. They completely forget him and betray him, and they speak it out loud. When Aaron sees this, when he hears this, does he protest? No. He builds an altar for this idol. And then he makes a proclamation. Tomorrow shall be a feast. And interesting, he calls this to the Lord. So again, friends, my question was why? Why doesn't Aaron seek the Lord? Why did he just automatically begin collecting gold and fashioning this idol, fashioning this God? I don't know. I don't have an answer for that. Aside from the people of Israel and Aaron seem to completely abandon the Lord. And that's the word that comes to mind is just betrayal, forgetting the Lord. So in the next paragraph, we see the Lord's response, right? Go down, he says to Moses, go down, for your people whom you brought up out of the land of Egypt have corrupted themselves. And he tells Moses exactly what has happened. Now, friends, to corrupt, that means to behave in a way that is immoral or lacks integrity. They have turned, and so he goes on to say how they have corrupted themselves. He says in verse 8, they have turned aside quickly out of the way that I commanded them. All right, that's a reminder to us that the people of Israel, they came out with Moses to meet the Lord. They heard the Lord speak those initial 10 words to them. They heard these commands. They heard the heart of the Lord. Despite hearing that, they have made for themselves a golden calf and have worshipped it and have sacrificed to it and said, "These are your gods, O Israel, who brought you up out of the land of Egypt." And friends, don't we see here that God's wrath, God's anger is completely justifiable, completely understandable? Have not we all been betrayed in some way? How do you feel in the midst of betrayal? Anger, sadness, confusion. I mean, I don't even think we can list all the feelings wrapped up into this. So what the word here that is used for God is wrath, and he calls it my wrath. He is angry. He is hurt. My wrath may burn hot against them, and I may consume them. He is ready to just put an end to this relationship with them. He's being authentic here. He's speaking his mind. He's speaking his heart. And we ought to appreciate that about the Lord. He's not just stuffing it in with Moses. He's being open and honest about how he feels. He also, friends, I think we see right here in verse 7, and the Lord said to Moses, "Go down, for your people whom you brought up out of the land of Egypt have corrupted themselves." Friends, right off the bat, right there, we need to pause and read into that. Here is God's grace to the people. He is sending Moses to intercede on behalf of the people. He himself is angry. He is ready to smite them, and he calls upon Moses to go down and intercede. He trusts Moses to do that. And so let's look at Moses' response in this last paragraph. How does Moses respond? Oh, friends, Moses rises up to the occasion in the most spectacular way. I mean, this is admirable, because think about what temptations are facing Moses. I mean, can't you imagine? Moses has every right to throw up his hands and be done with this people. The Lord also says, look, I'm going to consume them that I may make a great nation out of you. Friends, here's temptation for Moses. That's real temptation. But no, Moses rises to the occasion. The Lord has entrusted him to intercede when he says, "Go down, for your people whom you brought up out of the land of Egypt, for they have corrupted themselves." The Lord is entrusting to Moses to be this intercessor. And that's exactly what we see Moses do here. He implores the Lord. He begs of the Lord to relent from his anger, to relent from destroying the people. He intercedes on their behalf, and he intercedes on the behalf of this covenant between the Lord and the people. What do we learn about Moses through this? One, we see his selflessness, right? We see he is standing firm. He's not giving way to temptation. But I think the most beautiful thing we see is that his heart is unified with the Lord's heart. It is completely unified with the Lord in this covenant agreement. He reminds the Lord of his promise to Abraham and Isaac and Jacob. He begs the Lord to remember that. His heart is unified with the Lord's heart, that the nations around them, including Egypt, would know that he is Yahweh, that he is the Lord. Moses is unified with the Lord's heart. He's unified in this covenant. He's unified in the Lord's mission. He's unified with the Lord to make the Lord's name great. Friends, look at Moses. What a beautiful example to us, and what a picture of Christ too. Moses himself points forward to Jesus Christ, who intercedes on our behalf. Psalm 106 verse 23 is a beautiful cross-reference here. The psalmist says, Therefore, God said he would destroy them, had not Moses, his chosen one, stood in the breach before him to turn away his wrath from destroying them. And we just see, friends, Moses' selflessness, completely selfless. Friends, I think we need to just take a brief moment to also ask, what is it that we learn about the Lord here? One, I noticed as I stopped to answer that question and I look at this beginning paragraph, I see how the Lord hasn't just made us as robots to follow him. He has given us free will. The Lord has granted us the ability to choose him and follow after him, or to not, and to wonder. And within this, the Lord tests hearts. I think we learn that about the Lord. Number 2, as I've already said, the Lord is gracious, and he graciously sends Moses. And we see Moses rising to the occasion and standing in the gap, standing in that breach. Number 3, we see that God can become angry. We've seen this before in Exodus, but rightfully so. We see that his anger, his wrath is justifiable. He has been deeply betrayed. He has told the people what he expects of them. He has called the people to himself to be his treasured possession, and he has entered into this covenant agreement to them, and he has asked them to be faithful as he is faithful, but they have betrayed him. So justifiably, the Lord becomes angry. But then, friends, we see the Lord relent. This last line, and the Lord relented from the disaster that he had spoken of bringing on his people. Here's his grace. Here is his mercy, friends. And number 5, he is true to his promises. He keeps this covenant promise that he made all the way back in Genesis to Abraham and Isaac and Jacob. He keeps his promise that he has made to Moses and to the people of Israel. And friends, we see his faithfulness. He is faithful, steadfast in his faithfulness. How do we apply this? I think there's many ways to apply it. I'd love to talk about that with you. I did ask this question, friends. How could this story read differently? How could the people of Israel, how could Aaron have responded differently? And my answer to that is that they could have run to the Lord, run to him, cry out to him, look to him. They belong to him, and he longs, he desires that they come to him. He invites them to come to them. He has invited them. Oh, friends, today, let us run to Jesus. Let us seek him with all of our heart, soul, mind, and strength, especially when we're unsure, especially when we're in this wilderness, especially when we wonder where he is. Let us run. Let us turn to him. Let us seek him.